What is up, summoners, and welcome to the channel today for another class breakdown video. We are now 4 videos deep into this series that we started with Tech. We moved over into Mutant, went to Skill, and now we are looking at the Science class. And let me get these all sorted out here. I was planning to actually put this video together yesterday, but I knew we had 2 new characters in Green Goblin and Doc Ock coming to the game, and I wanted to wait and see if either one of them was going to be Science, because I didn't want to make the Science class and then leave those 2 characters out if one of them jumped in here. But unfortunately, if you want to look at it that way, there are neither one of them were Science. They were both Tech. So the Science class I think is still kind of lagging behind in the game. I think it's probably right there with the Cosmic class as far as being the worst overall classes in the game, unfortunately. There's a few characters right at the very top that have got quite a bit of usefulness, but pretty much everything behind that is mid-tier at best when you look at the overall game and kind of compare class to class. But we'll do our best to go through here, and as I've done with the other videos, we'll break up the characters into a top, mid, and bottom tier. Hopefully we'll give newer people building rosters an idea of where to put their resources at first. We'll talk about who's worth awakening with a Science Awakening Stone. We'll talk about who's worth ranking up Unduped, and then we'll rank our top 3 or 4 science characters. And hopefully that'll give you a good start as far as building your roster. So let's get right into it. We'll start with the bottom tier. And unfortunately, there's actually quite a few of characters that are here in the bottom tier. And can I just say that none of them are worth putting resources into. Characters like Joe Fixit, Luke Cage, She-Hulk, Spider-Gwen, and Ant-Man, which I know Spider-Gwen did fairly recently get an update. She is hitting a little bit harder now, but I'm still not a big fan of her. There are much better options, even in the Science class, but certainly overall, that you'd want to put resources into. When you look across the board at these characters, they kind of all have one thing in common, and that is that they have very, very low damage output and very little utility to compensate for that. Joe Fixit, Luke Cage especially. Luke Cage is a character that I feel has been underpowered, greatly underpowered. But yeah, Ant-Man, my arch nemesis here, Ant-Man, which I know some people will probably comment down below saying, well, Ant-Man's a really good defender when he's got his glancing ability up, and I understand all of that. But when you really look at defenders that you should add to your to Alliance War defense, there are other characters that are better, and really outside of a very few specific nodes you can put him on. He's not difficult to play around, and he has no other use in the game. You're not going to be able to use him for anything offensively based in Alliance War attack, in Alliance questing, and certainly he doesn't hit hard enough to clear any sort of story questing. So yeah, the bottom tier in the Science class is a very low tier in the overall game, and I would suggest, if you're newer, I understand that. If your roster is small, I understand that. If you need to rank them up, that's fine. If you just don't have that many 4 stars, but honestly, I would not take them past rank 3. I would leave them down there and wait, until further along in the game when you maybe have excess resources if you want to rank them up for the arena purposes. But really, you're better off kind of holding back some of those resources and waiting till you get better characters than kind of jumping ahead and putting them into these bottom tier characters. In the mid-tier, there's actually a lot of mid-tier champs here. That's kind of the story of the Science class. There's a lot of okay characters with very few that are kind of highlighted. In the mid-tier, we've got somebody like Rhino, which Rhino got a refresh. Oh man, I guess it's been about a year ago. Which he's a good example of a character that was bottom tier, and a refresh, even though they didn't necessarily change the character drastically. They just gave him a few tweaks here and there with his Unstoppable when he dashes forward that pushed him up into mid-tier. I feel like there's a lot of other characters they could do that too, but that's a totally different conversation. Anyway, Rhino he's an okay defender. In the bottom tiers, I think he's still pretty strong. When you put him on nodes that are stun immune in the bottom tier, I know people struggle with that. He's pretty good on Thorns as well, just because of the large amount of health that he has got. Yeah, if you look at the mid-tier overall, Rhino, Spidey, I'm just going to read them out here, Electro, Yellow Jacket, Abomination, Red Hulk, and Miles Morales. All of those characters right there, they all could be used in Alliance War defense, which is, it's kind of interesting because there are so many defenders that are in the Science class. I would say the Science class has got way more defenders than any other class outside of maybe Mystic, just because of Mystic Dispersion. But Spider-Man, especially when he is awakened, I mean, obviously he needs to be awakened to have his Spider Sense, which is where he's got a chance to evade. But as soon as you do have him awakened, he's one of the strongest defenders in the game. I have him as a 4-star. I wish I had him awakened as a 5-star. But yeah, certainly somebody that you'll want to add to your roster for defense. He'll be able to help you out even in the higher tiers on defense as well. But because he doesn't have really any other utility, he does hit fairly hard, but he doesn't have really any sort of other utility that you're going to allow him to go into, you know, AQ necessarily. Obviously, if he's on defense, you can't use him in Alliance War. But a solid mid-tier champ here. Good defender to build your roster, defensive roster around. Again, Electro, another good champ in higher tiers. He's fallen back quite a bit, but certainly in the lower tiers, he's still an excellent defender because of because of the static shock? Yeah, static shock. Basically, when you attack him, he does damage to the enemy, so he's a very defensive, purpose-built character. Yellow Jacket, a lot of people still have a problem evading his S1, so if you're going to use him on defense, you can put him on an unblockable S1. Could give people some problems. I know that I have seen people that have cleared Labyrinth of Legends with him as a 5-star character, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but his overall damage output is really not too bad when you have him as a 5-star character. So I could see a little bit of usefulness, I suppose, if you wanted to use him in AQ. But the problem is there's a lot of other better options, so he suffers from that a little bit, which holds him back into the mid-tier. Abomination, I actually quite like Abomination. I think he hits much harder than people realize. I don't think people really give him much play. I think on defense, again, especially on heal block nodes, I think he can really wreck some people. I don't really see too many Abominations nowadays in Alliance War, so I don't think people would necessarily be expecting that. So we probably could get you a couple kills on heal block nodes. Red Hulk, I want to like Red Hulk more than I do. I think his damage output, kind of like Abomination, is a little bit underrated. But again, if you're needing somebody to do damage, especially when you're looking in the Science class, Hulk is just so far ahead of all these other characters that it really holds them back down into the mid-tier. And then finally, we've got Miles Morales. Where's my Miles Morales? There he is right there. Miles Morales is a potential to be a decent defender. I don't see him a lot. The one thing he's got going for him is his Venom Blast, which depending upon the characters that you're running up against, it has a chance to do different effects. And it's actually pretty interesting. You know, he's got some power drain in there. He's got a stun chance depending upon the class you're running up against. So there's a little bit of dual purpose there. Not quite as good of a defender as Spider-Man, but also I think a little bit better offensive character than Spider-Man. So I think that balances him out, keeps him in the mid-tier. I think he is coming out as a 5-star character. He may already be out here in August as a 5-star character, but if not here in August, I think it's fairly soon. We'd be very interested to see if he doesn't find more usefulness as a 5-star character in the game. Then moving up into the top tier, the top tier, is very clearly defined. We will start with Hulk. Hulk is, in my opinion, a god tier champ ever since they updated him. He has a very, very strong opportunity to chain stuns together. You can get several hits in during a stun. When you've got Fury attacks, Fury buffs up, it increases the duration of stun. Plus, if you look there at his Hulk Rage, he becomes stronger and stronger the lower your health gets. So really, when you need to pull through, you know, when you're losing health, that's actually when he becomes better and better, allows you to get more quickly through through Alliance quests, especially is where I use him at because of being poison immune. Also having class advantage against Dormammu makes him an excellent AQ option. I have run him in the past in Alliance War as well. You have to be a little careful just because he gains Fury a lot, so it does feed Mystic Dispersion. But the one thing that I found to counter that is if you are taking damage again, he only is going to hit even harder. Plus, with class advantage against Mystic Dispersion, I usually can get through those fights just sheerly through the amount of offensive capability that he has got. As a 5-star character, he's going to wreck face. I cannot wait to get him as a 5-star character. Very, very strong. Clearly a #1 in the science class. Sitting behind him, I think for myself personally, would be Cap, World War II, and the regular Cap, which for my money, if I had to pick one of the two to take up, I would take up Cap World War II. The reason behind that is if you want to use him in an area outside of AQ, you can use him in Alliance War, and he's not going to be feeding the enemy willpower. If you look at the regular Captain America, let me pull him up here. When he blocks and when he has a perfect block, he actually fatigues the enemy. Right there, blocking, a 90% chance to fatigue the enemy, so that happens a lot. Essentially what that means is you have willpower up on the enemy for like the entire fight. If it wasn't for that fatigue, they would both equally be as good in AQ as they are in AW. But for that reason alone is why I personally would take up Cap World War II, just because you can successfully use him in both AQ and AW. But really both of them are very solid champs to add to your roster. I remember I got my Cap World War II really early on in the game, and he carried me through a lot of the endgame content at the time. Definitely good solid champ to add to your roster. Easy to play, easy to understand. Really can help you in a tight spot, kind of like Hulk. As the fight goes on, when you need perfect block chance, especially with Classic Cap, that's really when he's at his best. And then Quake. Quake, for me, she is a very good character. She's a little bit situational, and what I mean by that, obviously, is that her Quake style, quote-unquote, the way she can hold down heavies and build up shock, or not shock charges, what are they called? I can't think of what they're called. Aftershock charges. Is that what they're called? No, whatever they're called. Anyway, when you hold down block and she builds up these charges, that is a way to play around Mystic Dispersion champs, but obviously specifically Magic, because you're not feeding her power by holding down block. So in that instance, she is really good. However, outside of that, there's not really any good reason to play Quake style when you're fighting anybody else. The damage output, while it is okay, it's just not that great. And whenever you're playing Quake style, you always have the risk of getting yourself into a corner. And obviously, you really don't want to set yourself up for that disadvantage. So when you're playing other characters, playing Quake style is not a good idea. So that's why, in my opinion, I say she's very situational. She's like God tier when you're talking about Alliance War, Magic, and Mystic Dispersion champs. Whereas I think she's kind of more... I think she's still top tier in Science because the Science class is so bad. But I think overall she's probably a little more mid tier when you're not playing against Mystic Dispersion champs. But anyway, that's not the crap all over her. She's still a very good, very solid option. Definitely in the top tier of the Science class. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for my money in the top of the Science class. And then switching gears here and looking at who is worth ranking up, even Unduped. And let me clarify, when I say worth ranking up, I mean technically all 4-star characters are worth ranking up, in my opinion, to at least rank 3 for the purposes of arena grinding. However, when I'm talking about worth ranking up Unduped, I'm talking about at least 440, more so along the lines of looking more at like 550s as well. There's only a couple real good options here I want to point out. I know I just mentioned her, but Quake, her Quake style, I should have just left her up here. She has that whether she's awakened or not. Her Ricochet Pulse reflects some damage when she is blocking, which is nice, but doesn't really change the overall usefulness or the purpose of having Quake. Hulk is another one. He does benefit greatly from being awakened. His damage output is significantly better. However, even base Hulk is still a very solid champ with poison immunity. The chance to chain a bunch of stuns together, has a lot of fury that's up a lot, and all of that he gets when he's unawakened. So very, very good option there as well. Electro is another character. If you want to use him on defense, he has his static shock, whether he's awakened or not. That's the big draw to him. Outside of that, looking through here, there's not a lot of really good characters that are unawakened that I would say, hey, take up to 440 or 550. Spider-Man needs to be awakened. He doesn't get the chance to evade. Yellow Jacket, in my opinion, needs to be awakened. Without his Biosting 2.0, if the enemy does not use a special, you don't get that damage. Basically, it just falls off with no effect. The Biosting, though, will stun if they don't use the special. So I feel like he really needs to be awakened before you take him up too far. Who else we got there? I guess maybe Rhino. Rhino might not be a bad choice as well. He does have the Rhino armor. Basically, just gives him additional physical resistance. But if you're wanting to use him as far as an attacker maybe, or in questing, he still becomes unstoppable when he dashes forward. That's not at all linked to his awakened ability. Pretty much that awakened ability is there for defensive purposes. So yeah, I mean, Quake, Hulk, Electro, I guess I would throw Rhino in there as well. Cap, Classic Cap, and Cap World War II, I think are probably worth ranking up as well. I know that Cap World War II, when he's unawakened, he's got a good block proficiency, but he really does benefit from Safeguard. Safeguard increases the chance to perfect block by a large percentage when opponents have buffs, and that's kind of the big draw to him, because most of the time across the board, even when you're attacking, pretty much everybody's got some form of a buff up. So that really does benefit him. But I think in a class that is lacking really solid characters, I think Classic Cap and Cap World War II are both worth ranking up unduped. Now moving over to characters that are worth awakening. Definitely at the very top of the list for me is Hulk. Hulk is kind of on the top of all of these lists here when it comes to science class. But yeah, definitely Hulk. I don't need to go back into that. Spider-Man for me, and we're talking science awakening gems here. Spider-Man for me is a yes with an asterisk. You know, if you've got Hulk and he's already awakened, if you've got Cap, World War II or Classic Cap already awakened, then I would say, yeah, probably a good option after all of that is to invest it into Spider-Man. Like I said before, he is a good defender all the way through to the end game. You can still use him in Tier 2, Tier 1. Still going to get you kills. So I think he's probably worth using an awakening, a Science Awakening Stone on. And then, as I mentioned just a second ago, Cap. Both versions of them become significantly better when they're awakened. So I would put an Awakening Stone into them. Outside of that, I feel like we probably will have some more science characters coming to the game soon. So if you don't necessarily need, I mean, Hulk, I would take Hulk up right away. Outside of that, though, really take a look at your roster. And if you don't have to awaken any of these characters I've mentioned, I would probably hold on to that Science Stone, Science Awakening Gem, because I feel like we are due for some good science champs here very soon. And it would be a benefit to you to have that Awakening Stone when they come. As far as my top, let's say top 4 characters, obviously it's no surprise here, Hulk is at number 1. I think for myself personally, and a lot of this is shaped by my own personal experience, but I think that Cap World War II is slightly ahead of Classic Cap for the reasons I mentioned earlier, especially when he's awakened. I think I've got him in my number 2 spot. And then for number 3 and 4, I'm not sure how I want to rank these. Again, it is very, very situational with Quake. I think if you're going to use her on Alliance War, I think she falls into the 3rd spot for me. If you're not going to use her in Alliance War, I think Spider-Man takes her place and she falls to number 4. But either way, Quake and Spider-Man, depending upon what you need, are right there kind of fighting for the 3rd spot in the science class. Alright guys, the science class to me is just very uninteresting right now outside of pretty much Hulk, in my opinion. I very much am looking forward to them adding some new characters to the game. Just off the top of my head, like Red Skull, Lizard, Sandman, we were talking about it in the live stream last night. There's a lot of good science characters I feel they could add, and I hope that they add here very soon. The science class is very lackluster. very mid-tier defensive based, and I feel like it's needing another high utility character. Also with somebody that can do and has a decent regen. If you look through all of these characters, I think that Joe Fixit is the only character that has a chance to regen, depending upon what suit of cards he gets. But yeah, that just tells you pretty much the state of the science class. They really need somebody, I think, outside of Hulk, to pair up with Hulk up near the God tier to demigod tier. That's got some more utility, maybe even a little regen like I mentioned. Alright guys, I hope this helped you out. As always, you can leave your questions and comments. Would love to hear them down below. Hit me up over on Twitter as well. The link to that will be in the description. As always, thank you so much for the support. The next class we will break down will be the Mystic class, which there's a lot more to talk about there than there was here in the Science class, so I look forward to that one. But yeah, till I see you all in that video, have a great day.